Check this out. You may be shocked. Did you know that Columbia University, after being basically ordered to by Donald Trump, did you know that they are paying cash reparations? But not to who you would think. You see, the Palestine Chronicle, they were the ones that reported this, and I thought people would find this very interesting. Check this out, folks. Columbia University didn't pay reparations for slavery. Now it pays them to Zionists. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. This is not a joke, not a drill. They are about to kick out a lot of money, honey. A lot of money. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can follow. Despite its historic ties to slavery, Columbia University has never paid reparations to Black Americans, but now it has reached a compensation deal for its Jewish staff over claims of anti-Semitism. Many feel this represents a blatant prioritization of some groups over others by the academic institution. What did I tell you? Wait till you hear the dollar amount. Bowing to the pressure of the U.S. Trump administration, Columbia University not only agreed to pay $200 million to settle a federal investigation into alleged anti-Semitism, but also reached a historic settlement with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to pay 21 million class claims fund to provide reparations to Jewish employees impacted by alleged anti-Semitism. Let's highlight 21 million. Now, this goes back to the pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia University's campus. So you see how I told you when it comes to certain groups, when it's time to implement repair, they have no problem doing it. Now, Columbia University is also tied to the slave trade. And it took, here's the thing, other articles have reported this, but they didn't go as deep as the Palestine Chronicle did. It took the Palestine Chronicle to dive into this to explain to people that Columbia was tied to slave trade. And instead of paying reparations to American descendants of slavery, they are paying reparations to their Jewish employees because their feelings were hurt during the pro-Palestinian protests. Hello? All because of feelings. All because of feelings. So check this out. On April 17th, 2024, anti-war student protesters set up their first encampment at Columbia University in order to pressure the academic institution to divest from Israel. By the way, that was what they were asking for. That was the demand. The reaction from the university was to call in law enforcement, including riot police, to violently expel them for their peaceful activism and lawfully exercising free speech. That crackdown triggered a wave of encampments by students at Ivy League universities all across the country, and some non-Ivy as well. Netanyahu compared the student protest to Nazis, which was followed by U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, labeling them all anti-Semitic and accusing them of being terrorist sympathizers. Then they point out here that the media also decided to follow suit, CNN and Fox News. And this is why I continue to say, corporate media, they are the ones that continue to push the propaganda. I still haven't seen CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. You don't see them get behind any type of push or reparations for descendants of slavery in this country. In fact, it seems like to me, there only seems to be one group in particular where if there is harm that is done, there is a call to fix it monetarily, not with a letter, not with a statement, but with money. Some of the same people who tell you it's divisive, if you talk about this for descendants of slavery, for freedmen, where are those people at now? Where are they at? How many people covered the story. Why are they so silent? It goes on to say here, let's go down here a little bit. They go through what happened during the encampments. And then it says here, there was a mass unseating of university presidents, was already unprecedented in the history of U.S. academia. However, when Trump took over the White House, he only accelerated this assault on free speech. The Trump administration has been following a strategy published by the Washington-based Heritage Foundation called Project Esther. This document was published by influential right-wing think tank on October 7th, 2024, and has been followed almost precisely to the letter since Donald Trump's inauguration. So what you see here, and this is what I've been warning people about, this is that Miriam Adelson money being put to work. Getting back to the money, to the great displeasure of Columbia faculty, the university decided to back down once again and hand $200 million to the Trump administration, in addition to pledging $21 million in reparations for Jewish staff. $21 million, not 21,000, 21 million. Let's get into the slavery history here. Putting aside the fact that the university refused to stand up for or compensate Palestinian students or others with reparations for violent assaults and trauma that they endured during this period, Columbia University has still never paid reparations to Black Americans for its ties to slavery. The university, particularly in its early years, while still called the King's College, was deeply immersed in the slave trade. In fact, of its first 10 presidents, at least half were proven back in 2017 to have owned slaves. Now, they're not alone. Harvard University is complicit in this as well, which they also acknowledge, and they still ain't pay nothing. It's not like they don't know. They know, and they've addressed it. But you see how it is when it comes to Black Americans, they don't want to kick no money out. In addition to this, slavery was such a normal part of life at the university that it had seeped its way into the curriculum by the 1760s, as most students there were of wealthy merchant families whose wealth came from the slave trade. There was even a constant need for college building operation funds required for maintenance, which were donated mainly by active participants in the slave trade. The stepson of the U.S. founding father, George Washington, was even recorded as having bought a slave with him to the university. In 2016, Jordan Brewerton uncovered documentation that proved 28 students at the university had taken out a total of 44 advertisements for runaway slaves in the local newspapers. Although many of the records linking the university to the slave trade were destroyed or lost in translation, research from Columbia students managed to uncover many significant links that paint the picture that the academic institution was at least in part built and sustained with funds made as a result of the slave trade. And people don't want to talk about it. That's Columbia University. And of course it took, and this is the thing I want people to understand. Of course it took, now listen to this. In other words, reparations for hurting people's feelings, but no reparations for descendants of enslaved Black Americans, the population on the backs of which the university built itself. So the academic institution set up class claims fund that will in effect pay reparations to its Jewish staff over claims that students opposing a genocide had allegedly engaged in anti-Semitic acts because their feelings were hurt. Now, we got to give a shout out where it's due. It's the Palestine Chronicle that reported this. This is why I continue to say you have to attack the power struggle at hand. If you're not attacking power, nothing is going to change significantly for you. Now, this university basically built off the backs of slaves. They ain't pay no reparations to freedmen, descendants of slaves, but they just kicked out money just like that to Jewish employees because their feelings were hurt during the protest. You follow me? And they may not be the last. UCLA, here's another one. UCLA to pay $6 million to settle lawsuit over pro-Palestinian protests. You see, they hitting up all these schools, telling them to kick out money to who? Kick out money to who? $6 million. While UCLA has denied any wrongdoing, it agreed to settle fully with $50,000 payments to each of the plaintiffs in addition to the $2.33 million in donations to organizations that combat anti-Semitism. Of all the things that have happened and continue to happen to Black people in this country, you ain't never see them move like this. You ain't never see them. Best you get is Chuck Schumer, Jim Clyburn, and Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth. That's the best you get. And I say this, and everyone pay very, very close attention to what I say here. I see a lot of this online where it's Black people arguing against each other and not attacking the power structure that is allowing this to happen. While Black people are fighting against each other online, look at what just happened. I would like to see a movement to demand Columbia University to pay reparations to Black Americans. Because you see, we don't have power. We don't have PACs. We don't have, the ADL, which was supposed to push back and stop hate against everybody, primarily fights for Israel. None of these organizations are trying to join along with Black Americans to get the repair that is owed to us. And I'm not even talking about the police brutality. I'm not even talking about redlining. I'm talking about the 40 acres and a mule, which would be much more today. So you see how people can get together to advocate for a specific group and get what they feel they are owed. And a lot of people are not covering this story. People need to understand, look at this. This is coming directly from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It says this is the largest EEOC public settlement in almost 20 years. This is why I said you may be shocked. Because I don't want to hear nothing else from nobody else. Now, do you see any of those other people, those students at the campus, the people who filed the claims, the ADL, any of these other organizations that say they're fighting for everybody? Do you see these organizations trying to get the same type of repair for descendants of slavery? No. Everybody bookmark this. When we clip this story, Eric, everybody bookmark this when we clip this story. So you'll have the clip of just this story and you can share it with other people. It's not about getting the views. It's about getting that message out because people need to know. I don't want nobody coming back to me a couple years from now when I say, well, yes, Columbia University gave reparations to the Jewish employees. I don't want nobody to come back and say, no, that never happened. This been happening. When Marianne Williamson had that conversation with Marcel Dixon tried to tell her, no, they did this again under Barack Obama. Obama was also giving repair to those organizations. And she said, no, that didn't happen. It did happen. Here's another reason why this is incredibly troubling. Chris Smalls did what I believe is his first interview. He shared this on Twitter on ABC News. Listen to what Chris Smalls said they did to him, what Israel did to him. I want you to hear it because this is who they giving reparations to. Listen to this.
And so, Chris, I do want to hit on that because you were the only Black person on board the boat and also the only one to face violence, you say, from the IDF, being choked and kicked by 7 soldiers at once. Tell us a little more about that experience, if you will.
Yeah, once again, my color definitely had a role to play. The discrimination against Black and brown and Palestinian people. I got a glimpse of it myself. It's nothing compared to what Palestinian people go through every day. But once again, I was voicing my concerns, voicing my opinions about what has happened. This illegal siege that Israel has imposed when 7 authorities didn't like the fact that I didn't want to consent to their propaganda. They violently threw me to the ground. They put their knees in my back. They 3 on each side levitated me while one of the soldiers or authorities grabbed my hair, pulled my hair back and my jewelry to use it as a noose to choke me. And as he was choking me, he was yelling, telling me a bunch of racist remarks, saying he's not my brother and telling me to shut up repeatedly until I was separated from the rest of the volunteers. They kept me isolated in a room. They threw me up against the wall a couple of times. Once again, just subjected to horrific conditions that nobody else had to face. And, I kind of expected that, but I didn't expect it to be that extreme. And I'm glad that I'm here to tell the story and once again, to shed light on the atrocities that Israel has imposed on the Palestinian people. They need to be held accountable and we need to break their illegal siege.
They used his necklace and his hair, they pulled back his hair and used it as a noose around his neck. That's who Columbia University just gave reparations to. And I've been so angry with all the arguing I see back and forth between Black people online when it's so obvious to me you're not fighting the final boss. You're not going back against the power. And I'm sitting back and I'm looking at all these arguments with each other online and I'm like, rich white Zionist billionaires are sitting back and they're laughing. They're laughing. They're like, yeah, let them attack each other so they're not looking at us. Final boss. Yes, final boss. Skylar said it. I'm telling you, white supremacy is like the final boss in a video game, but we keep losing against it. But one day we'll win or this world will crumble under the weight of it all. And I agree with Skylar here because this is something I want people to fully understand as well. The reason why we have not received cash reparations for descendants of slavery in this country, for freedmen in this country, is because of white supremacy. It's not true that the money isn't there. Columbia University, the same way they can pay those employees, they can pay what is owed to descendants of slavery. Harvard University, your check is long overdue. Harvard owned slaves. People keep talking about, well, the government only has this. The budget can change if they want it to change. But on top of that, these corporations, and I do consider universities to be a business, having worked at them for years, they are a business. These corporations, these businesses also have a debt that is owed. Now, I mentioned Columbia, I mentioned Harvard University. I'm pretty sure there's others out there if we take a look. But it's owed. So what I ask of everyone is this, if you're watching this show in particular, instead of arguing with other Black people online, start pointing your fingers and your voice at the very power structure that is not repairing descendants of slavery and is choosing to repair groups that do not need repair. Groups that have already received repair. And we are looked over every time. That is a debt that is owed. And honestly, they don't want us to have it. They don't want us to have it because if we have it, that means that we might buy homes in their communities. We might become their neighbors. We might be at their country clubs. We might be at the same table as them. They don't want it. So stop blaming other people who have no power and start pointing your finger at the ones that do, the ones who's writing the damn checks. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.